the second item on the piece, which is that multi-factor authentication will become ineffective. Now, I wanted to start with this one because to me, this one is kind of funny. Becoming ineffective. I think ineffective is a strong word about this. We've seen a number of different things that have kind of gone awry this year with multi-factor authentication. But for me, that is ineffective is a hard one. I think it will definitely change. But David, I think you had some other thoughts on this one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult creating a predictions piece. Everyone wants to kind of go crazy, go wild, predict the next huge thing that no one could possibly have thought of. And that's very likely not going to come true. Equally, some of the predictions pieces in the past have played it far too safe and said, oh, security is going to get harder. So we've tried to kind of land somewhere in the middle and basically base the predictions that we've put into the article on evidence, on things that we've been seeing over the past year or so, things that we've been seeing growing. And MFA bypass and MFA kind of interception techniques has been on the rise, almost exponentially. So I forget what I put in the article, useless or ineffective, but it's hard to think that it won't become almost useless. If you look at the number of ways in which multi-factor can be bypassed, right? We've got mobile malware, which can, intercept SMS messages. It can screen read, it can capture cookies, it can capture credentials as you enter them. We've got real-time phishing proxies, which are able to effectively bypass any multi-factor system because the proxy is mimicking and interacting with the live site. So it doesn't need to collect credentials and then reuse them a day or a week later. It's intercepting everything that's entered into that browser by the user in real time. So the user will enter their multi-factor code into the phishing site and it immediately gets sent to the real backend site where the MFA code is still valid. We've seen MFA bombing. So the idea now that when we have our mobile devices, because we want to make security easier, we want to remove that hindrance, that hurdle for users. Instead of having them enter a really complicated 6-digit code, let's just give them another iPhone or Android notification. So now our MFA apps are popping up notifications. Did you really mean to sign in? Is this you signing in? Now, if we get one of those notifications as we're logging in, fantastic. And if we get a notification when we're not logging in, that's also fantastic. We can happily click no and report an issue to our IT security people. But when we start getting bombarded with security, or MFA pop-ups, or maybe when we're multitasking, as we're all doing, and maybe not paying attention, there's a good chance we'll hit yes to that MFA authentication when we didn't mean to. And attackers know this, and they're relying on it. They're relying on this bombarding and overwhelming notification system, so that in effect, you will accidentally click yes at some point, and it might take them 100 attempts or 1,000 attempts, but it will succeed. So again, if you look at all the number of ways in which multi-factor is being technologically and socially engineered around, it's hard to see that MFA will ever be a complete solution. I mean, it was always a bit of a kind of increasing that barrier to entry, right? Increasing the difficulty for attackers. And now they find pretty useful and consistent ways of getting around it. So I think we're going to need to, almost to your point, Aubrey, we're absolutely not saying that MFA is useless. We're not saying that MFA shouldn't be used. It definitely should be. But I think it's really important for organizations to understand the limitations of their MFA system. Understand how easy it is for SIM swapping to capture SMS codes or to be read. What are the limitations or problems that real-time phishing proxies cause? So understanding these limitations is going to be key. And I do think we're going to need probably a bit more technology to help us improve our identity and authentication online. And we're hoping that the FIDO's passkeys solution will help raise that barrier significantly in the coming years.
You mentioned the MFA bombing, and I agree. I don't think MFA is going to go away, and I don't think it should go away. It is better than nothing, and it's right now it's essentially all we've got. But we don't help ourselves. Like you say, we decided that a 6-digit passcode was far too difficult for our users, so we enabled push notifications. Now, as much as I roll my eyes every time I have to actually open, an authenticator app and get the 6-digit code, I'd kind of rather we went back to that. Because the push notifications, at least I can't speak for anybody else's experience, we're almost training our users to fall for those MFA fatigue attacks. Because you can start your machine after updates or whatever, and have 5 different things in a row all prompt for MFA. And those 5 things will all come through to your phone. So you're quite used to going, accept, accept, accept. Oh, I must need another one, right? Accept. I've had, I assume, bug recently that probably only affects Android, where I'll click approve and the prompt doesn't go away. And, every time that happens, so did it not go away, or is that another prompt? Is it a prompt from something I should be saying yes to, or is it a prompt from something I shouldn't be saying yes to? It's impossible for the user to know, so it's no surprise people fall for those attacks. But like you say, any solution that involves that challenge and response, there will always be a way to gather that challenge and the response and then use it for your nefarious purposes. So we need something that doesn't rely on that to come along and supplant MFA.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on the push notifications. I remember the first time I ever saw that, was Jesse Driscoll. Jesse, if you're out there, showed it to me and went, "Oh, this is fantastic." And I went, "Oh man, that looks like a nightmare to me. That could be really bad." And I didn't know how, but it just didn't look like. Although I was happy to install it and start using it on my phone too. So it was super easy. And finally, we understand, I guess, the ramifications now regarding that. So I think that one of the things that I mentioned when we talked about one of these MFA bypasses over the past few months is maybe moving towards not thinking of multi-factor authentication as two-factor authentication. Doesn't always have to be 2 factors. On a couple of my advanced customers, when I was still doing the sales thing, sales engineering, I used to prescribe 3 to 5 factor authentication anytime I could. And I think that is something that needs to be the new normal.
I will partly corroborate that and also contradict it. I think because going back to the kind of MFA prompts, right? So much about security that's overlooked is around user experience, user interaction. We're going back to MFA notifications. We could look back to the old school SSL and TLS warnings we used to get in our browsers that just meant nothing to users at all, and you could click a button and go past it. So we're training users to kind of bypass warnings. We're overwhelming them with nonsensical messages. So additional factors, I definitely agree, but I think probably the additional factors will have to be automatically derived.
Yes.
They shouldn't necessarily require a user to do an additional thing. So it will be the likes of, behavior analytics or device analytics, user interaction. So it requires kind of server-side tech and maybe some client-side tech to not only inspect the device, but see how the user's using it. Are they really a human user? Are they some kind of automated or bot user? Has that same user fingerprint been detected across a number of devices from different IPs, which is weird. So I agree on the multiple factors, but they don't and probably shouldn't be user inputted factors.